The Army Corps of Engineers says it's building the best storm protection system this region has ever had. But tonight, as 4 Investigates reports, independent engineers and public officials question why the Corps is again using a design that failed in Katrina and why the agency has deviated from an original guideline for another safety feature. What could those choices mean for long-term public safety? One of the lessons the flooding that followed Katrina taught New Orleans and the engineering community is that so-called eye walls like these that failed along the London, 17th Street and industrial canals are less stable and more prone to failure than upside-down T-walls.
In general, I think it's safe to say that T-walls are a more substantial structure.
Now, as the Army Corps of Engineers scrambles to meet the June deadline for 100-year flood protection for this region's levee system, construction crews are building a flood wall along Hayne Boulevard in eastern New Orleans. And as they drive 45-foot steel sheet piles into the ground and build a flood wall, they are also doing something that some engineers and public officials did not expect and are clearly concerned about. The crews are building an eye wall on top of the levee.
I'm very surprised that the Corps is specifying and designing the use of eye walls anywhere around this New Orleans area. These things have failed and caused flooding.
Because they failed during Hurricane Katrina. It's just that plain and simple.
Engineer Stratford Goins, who resigned as a commissioner of the Eastern Flood Protection Authority this past June, has serious concerns about the eye wall the Corps is building. He has declined an on-camera interview. But in emails detailing his concerns, Goins says T-walls are more robust. He adds T-walls can be designed for future modifications to increase the level of protection. He says soil subsidence and sea level rise may call for raising the level of protection in the future. But, quote, this cannot be done with eye walls. However, the Army Corps says the eye wall is the right approach.
Well, it wouldn't be practical to build a T-wall for something 2 foot high.
The Corps' Chief of Execution Support says the Corps' guidelines allow an eye wall for any flood wall that's less than 4 feet high. And he says this wall is only about 2 feet high.
This is a very efficient means, and the steel that it's sitting on goes 45 feet into the ground.
In addition, John Grieshaber says if the level of protection does have to be raised one day, that rock dike in front of the flood wall could be enlarged.
And that would have the exact same effect as raising the wall, because it would trip more of the waves and the wall would not have to be raised.
The regional director of the Flood Authority, engineer Bob Turner, says he is satisfied with the Corps' reasoning on this.
In this particular case, I don't think that there's a problem with using eye walls there.
Another issue raising concerns, the Corps' failure to coat many of the sheet piles they are driving into the ground with a coal tar epoxy to prevent corrosion, as the original guidelines for the storm protection system required. The local flood authority has objected to that and has asked for a peer review of what the Army Corps has chosen to do.
The authority has said on numerous occasions that we would prefer all the steel piles, both sheet piles and H piles, to be coated.
Why?
We think that's the better solution. We're more comfortable with that based upon the experts that we've talked to.
Because it would be less likely to deteriorate?
Yeah, because we would have a longer life.
In fact, this waiver that the local Corps office got from headquarters in Mississippi, allowing use of thicker sheets of steel in place of the protective coating, also stipulates, quote, coal tar epoxy should be the preferred option for corrosion protection when the schedule allows its use.
Not coating these sheets is, to me, saying, hey, we're just going to let them sit there for 15 years or so, because that's how long it's going to take to corrode them to maybe an unsafe thickness.
Yet John Grieshaber of the Corps says the steel's extra thickness has the same effect as coating it against corrosion and decay.
We can give up some of that steel to, as you refer to it, the decay or the corrosion, and still have the required section. You're far better off with the section there, the big section there, that may lose a little bit of steel, as opposed to having a smaller section that's coated, because you'll always have that excess metal that the smaller section doesn't have.
But the former flood commissioner, Stratford Goins, says as steel corrodes, it expands. This will cause the concrete to spall, pop out. In his view, not coating the sheet piles is like adding to the thickness of the untreated siding on your house, not painting the siding, and hoping it will not decay.
I'm concerned, and I am going to want to know why. I am going to want to know why. Why are they driving them uncoated?
Stratford Goins says for this project, budgets and schedules seem to have trumped engineering design and judgment. But Grieshaber says the Corps has not sacrificed any quality to increase production or reduce costs. Stratford Goins also has concerns about the Eastern District of the Southeast Flood Protection Authority. He says the authority's oversight of the Corps has, quote, lessened to the point